They dug a lake on my land while I was 2 states away helping my brother move. Not a little garden pond, not something you can hide behind a shrub. A full 2-acre basin, heavy machines, clay sealant water, already pooling from my spring, right where my cattle used to graze. I remember staring at it from the ridge, feeling like someone had cut a hole in the world I grew up in, and then Brent told me their contractor said the land was theirs. Like that made it okay. If you want a short version, someone decided my history didn't matter and then smiled about it. I'm Daniel, been around this place my whole life. My family bought this ground back in '62, 480 acres of timber and pasture, a crooked stacked stone fence that runs the ridge like it's more stubborn than any of us. My granddad used to prop his boot on those stones and say, "Land's the only thing they're not making more of, Danny. Take care of it." So I took care of it, walked it, counted the trees, kept the spring from getting choked with leaves. The fence isn't just a marker, it's a story, and stories matter out here. For years, the fields next to that fence belonged to old Mr. Rollins. Quiet, nodded more than he talked. If a cow wandered, I'd walk it back. If a tree fell on a corner post, we'd split the work. Then Mr. Rollins died, and the property sold to a couple from Nashville. Brent and Laurel, mid-40s, polished, always like someone had just told them a better life was waiting. They called it a retreat. I called it trouble. First meet was fine, neighborly, quick. He cruised up in some shiny side-by-side, grinning like he'd discovered a new park. "We're thinking of doing some improvements," he said, lounging against the gate like it was already his. He mentioned a water feature, and I laughed. "You got room on your side." That was the last easy thing we shared. Fast forward 3 months, my brother lost his job in Chattanooga. His lease was up. I drove up, helped him pack 9 days of hauling boxes, sleeping on a couch that wasn't mine. When I got back, I didn't stop at the house. I went straight to the back acreage because that's what you do when something's yours. You look at it. When I crested the ridge, there was blue where blue didn't belong. A basin, banks cut, sharp clay, exposed water glinting like it had always belonged there. I rolled down the truck window and the smell hit me, churned earth and diesel and the kind of new that comes with heavy machines. I walked closer and saw it, the spring that has fed our creek for decades, rerouted. The creek's course changed, mud everywhere, tire tracks leading back to a machine that had no business on my side of the stacked stones. 40 yards past the fence, clearly undeniably mine. I called Brent. He answered calm like he was checking in on a party. "What's going on?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Is there a lake on my property?" He paused. Not a confused pause, a considered one. "Our contractor verified the boundary," he said. "Our surveyor says it's within our parcel." I told him the stone fence marks the line. He sighed like I'd interrupted his schedule. "Fences aren't always accurate," he said. "We invested close to $35,000. We did our due diligence." You ever hear that kind of sentence and know it's the moment everything's changed? They weren't asking to talk. They were announcing a position. That was the first crack. I called Harold Bennett, old Harold, who's walked more property lines than I have had birthdays. He's the kind of man who measures twice and makes sure the measuring stick isn't lying. He came out with plats and county records, and he walked the fence and tapped on the old deeds like they were a rhythm he knew by heart. "This boundary's been documented since 1871, he said, crisp and annoyed. "That fence aligns with the original markers. There's no gray area." The lake was on my side. "We sent a certified notice, 18 days to restore the land." I thought that would be the end. I really did. You show someone the facts, they back out, fix the mistake. But a week later, a lawyer's letter arrived from Nashville, polished, confident, saying their clients had a licensed survey, that improvements were made in good faith, that any challenge would be contested in court. The letter oozed a kind of polite entitlement. It didn't mention the stone fence. It didn't mention the spring. It ignored the asking. When they start hiring lawyers, it stops being about confusion. It becomes posture. Pride has a funny way of dressing up as principle. I drove down to their place that afternoon and found them out by their new water hands on hips, watching 2 men install fountain aerators in the middle of what belonged to me. They'd staked a dock like they'd been imagining sunset wine nights for months. "You get our lawyer's letter," Brent called like he was checking a box. "I did," I said. He nodded, satisfied. "Then you understand where we stand." He mentioned his attorney and said, calm as a bank vault, that if there was a discrepancy, it would be sorted legally, and until then they'd keep going. My attorney warned me, don't act without a court order. Their attorney said, complete the project unless there's a stay. It was strategy finish the beautiful thing and bet I wouldn't want to drag out the mess. Harold filed a boundary affidavit with the county. He also lodged a land disturbance complaint excavation without jurisdictional verification. A clock got put on the whole thing, but Brent and Laurel doubled down. The dock went up, ornamental grasses got planted, a stone fire pit appeared near the bank. I didn't sleep much those next few weeks. I remember driving by one evening and seeing Laurel there sitting on that dock wine glass catching the sun like she'd already moved into the idea. For a second, a stupid human second, I thought the lake did look peaceful. Then my granddad's voice cut through like a cold wind. You take care of it. It'll take care of you. You let one thing slide, you teach people how to treat you. Court was small and smelled like old paper and polish. Harold laid out the deeds, the overlays, photographs, some taken by men living here before any of us were alive. Their survey, it turned out, leaned on GPS approximations and skipped the physical monuments that had been referred to for generations. The contractor apparently took a gamble and started digging. The judge, sharp-eyed woman, early 60s, listened without theatrics. The stone fence constitutes a recognized historic boundary, she said simply, and ordered restoration within 21 days, or else they would be authorized to do the work and bill Brent and Laurel. Brent tried the diplomacy line outside the courtroom. This doesn't have to get ugly, he said low. I told him the court ordered it. You know what this costs? He asked. I did know, but I also knew what it costs to let someone assume they can redraw your life because they have deeper pockets. So I did what the judge ordered. Harold documented everything. We filed affidavits. We watched the deadline go by. They did nothing. If anything, they made it prettier. Day 22, landscapers were planting more ornamentals. The dock looked like it belonged. I called Curtis, a man who'd been moving dirt for 30 years. Doesn't talk much, but when he says he can do it, it gets done. 2 bulldozers, 3 dump trucks. Harold with his clipboard, me standing at sunrise watching the machines roll in. Curtis looked at me once and said, "Last chance." I looked at the water reflecting pale orange sky and thought of kids in 10 years, of whoever would sit there with baited lines and laugh, and then I thought of lines, actual boundaries, invisible until someone crosses them. Do it, I said. When the blade bit the bank, it made a sound that made my chest tighten. Clay collapsing, water surging, mud fighting back. The dock tilted and snapped like a toy. It wasn't pretty, it was a mess, but it was surgical. They pushed the banks back, filled the hole with the same dirt they'd taken, removed the fountain pipes, hauled the dock off in sections. It wasn't vengeance, it was enforcement. By the second day, the water was gone, mud, and the outline of what had been there. Curtis graded the slope. Harold photographed every stage. Brent came racing down, breathless, and called the whole thing destruction of value. Laurel called it malicious. They sued me 10 days later for destruction of private property, loss of investment, emotional distress, and the phrase that made me laugh out loud, malicious interference with land enjoyment on my own land. Lawyers love words that make the average person gasp. We went back to court. The judge asked simple questions. Did you file an appeal? Did you request a stay of enforcement? Their answers were pauses and then no. The order stood. Their suit was dismissed. The judge also awarded me costs, survey fees, filing costs, and just under 10 grand for environmental remediation and timber loss, because Harold documented that their excavation had crushed some younger hardwoods and caused silt downstream. When the judge read the remediation number, I watched Brent's shoulders sag a hair. People look different when the math hits them. The house they were building sat for months while word went around rural counties are small and realtors talk. The property listed the following spring. It sold for less than they paid. I don't know their exact dollar loss, and honestly, I don't need to. They'd taken a gamble and it didn't pay off. New owners came. Retired couple from Birmingham brought a pie, introduced themselves properly. First thing the husband said, "We've heard about the fence." I smiled and said, "It's a good fence." He nodded. "We don't plan on testing it." For the first time in a long while, I slept without a memory loop of arguments running through my head. If you expect me to tell you I enjoyed watching a little lake disappear, that's not how it was. When Curtis shut down the last machine and the last truck pulled away, There was relief, but also something heavier, like finality. Once you've gone that road with a neighbor, the easy waves over the fence don't come back. I lost the illusion that common sense wins before papers are signed. I also gained clarity. Boundaries are more than lines in dirt. They're how you teach people where you stand. People ask me if I would have done anything different. Maybe I should have insisted on a joint survey the first week. Maybe I should have hired an attorney sooner instead of hoping a certified letter would be enough. But would I have filled that lake back in? Yes. Not because of the money, because some things aren't for sale. Letting them keep that lake would have been a precedent. Somebody tests a line, you step back once, and next time they'll push a little harder. I couldn't let that happen. Now the grass has grown thick where the basin was. The spring runs clear again. The stone fence still follows the ridge quiet and unmoved. Sometimes I walk down there and stand where the water used to be and feel both tired and oddly steady, like a weathered fence post that still catches the light. My granddad was right, land outlasts arguments. It also outlasts people who think a lawyer makes them right. So tell me, if you were standing where I stood, would you have done the same? Would you have tried to negotiate, hoped for the best, taken the money? Or would you have called the bulldozers the minute the deadline passed? Do you think Brent and Laurel were reckless or just blind with confidence in professionals? At what point does good faith become arrogance? Drop your thoughts. Tell me a story if you've ever had to protect something that wasn't just property, but part of who you are. I'm actually curious where folks land on this. I'll see you in the next one.